A few years ago, our pastor ended his life. But when the news came, our executive pastor called me about 7 o'clock Saturday morning. And when he told me the news, I, in denial, said, no, don't tell me that. No, he didn't. No, please, no, I don't want to hear this. I was so grief-stricken over my friend, my pastor, who hired me, who I've been in staff meetings with and on retreats with, who've sat under his feet of the preaching of the Word of God, a good teacher, a good pastor, a good preacher. I just couldn't reconcile in my mind that he would do that. And it was over. It could not be retrieved. And so after the phone call, I recall very vividly, I just burst into tears and wept like a baby. And my wife just held me and consoled me. And it was a hard moment. It was a hard moment for days. I loved him and hated to see a fellow soldier fall that way. And the aftermath of how that would affect the church, the sheep. How would it affect his wife? How would it affect his children and his grandchildren?
For 31 years, I had the opportunity to serve on church staff. Very early in my ministry, I had what would be considered success or opportunity to serve with some wonderful men of God. I had long tenures in my churches. 2 different churches I served for 7 years, another church for almost 10 years. But then one day, I had an encounter with a pastor that I served and I worked with who decided he wanted to make some changes. And those were very difficult changes to make. And so there were accusations that were made, there were things that really weren't true, but the pastor determined that he wanted to make a change. And so for the betterment of the bride, I decided to resign. I often tell people that my first 30 years of ministry were very Opie-esque. It was as if I lived in Mayberry and I always saw everybody with the glass half full and overflowing. And I never really did see those ministers who were hurting because I really had never hurt myself. And then when I began to hurt, I began to realize that there were a vast number of men and women who were hurting deeply.
And I think many people don't realize that the pastors have problems just like anyone else in the congregation. They don't often broadcast it, and they often don't have a friend or a confidant that they can go to. According to some studies, 81% of pastors do not even have a close friend. And you say, how can that happen? Because we guard ourselves because of fear of reprisal if we let people know, and then if it ever came back on us, it would damage us. Number 2, pride of letting our halo lower than it is because of people's expectations, and then expectations we put on ourselves.
Many times pastors do feel very isolated. They feel very much alone, and they need someone that they can talk to in a very safe and natural setting. What I've found is many times over the years is pastors tend to wear an S on their chest when there is no S on the chest. And so they have very few meaningful, honest, transparent, and real relationships.